This is the Microschool Minute, your weekly dose of microschooling news and events.
In this week's edition of the Microschool Minute, the Florida Education Savings Account program saw over 220,000 family applications this year alone, a surge that has resulted in an onslaught of options for parents. Suddenly, families have more than 2,000 private schools at their fingertips, along with the option to use the funding for private homeschooling expenses, tutoring, therapies, and other curricular materials. In populous areas like Broward County, parents now have a choice of over 366 private schools. This rapid expansion of choice programs across the country is forcing education policy experts to fundamentally rethink how schools should be assessed, moving beyond traditional standardized metrics. The crucial question is what data parents need to ensure truly informed choice and transparency. A significant and concerning gap exists between parents' perceptions of their children's academic standing and the objective data on student performance. New research from Learning Heroes indicates that a whopping 79% of parents believe their children are earning B grades or better in school. However, this optimistic perception clashes directly with national academic results, as only 30% of students demonstrate proficiency or above on reading and math on the National Assessment for Educational Progress. This enormous disconnect highlights the critical need for states, districts, and schools to consistently provide accessible information. School leaders are being advised to prioritize sharing comprehensive details of their education programs to enable informed choice and transparency, including the curriculum that they use and support for diverse learners. Parents are also seeking a clearer picture of a school's budget, including true cost allocations for personnel, professional development, and enrichment. The act of educational measurement is viewed by critics as inherently political, especially since the data generated determines access to significant public funding, over $769 billion in K-12 spending in 2021 to 2022. Alex Cortez argues that reformers often measure what they value without first asking local communities for their definition of success. This top-down approach risks the imposition of external standards. Cortez suggests that capturing education measures is not necessarily data science, but political science. The rollout of Tennessee's new statewide voucher program has prompted a public dispute over data transparency. Republican Representative Kevin Vaughn, who voted for the program, is formally questioning the state's refusal to disclose how many of the 20,000 recipients were already enrolled in private schools. A financial analysis on the bill estimated that 66% of the students would be enrolled in private schools already, leading critics to call the program a subsidy. Democratic State Senator Jeff Yarbrough called the state's refusal to release student enrollment data absurd, pointing to data suggesting that 50% of the program's financial benefit goes to the top 5% of families by income, a statistic that he deemed shocking for a state-rolled-out program. New education savings account laws in states like Georgia and Texas are now introducing requirements that create significant structural barriers to new and innovative educational models. Georgia's new program requires that a school be accredited and demonstrate fiscal soundness by having been in operation for one full school year without ESA funds. Similarly, Texas' new ESA law mandates that participating private schools must be accredited and have been operating for at least 2 years to access those funds. These regulations restrict the permissionless creation that fuels innovation, contrasting sharply with Florida's approach, which has no accreditation or track record requirement, and saw a net gain of 700 private schools between 2012 and 2022. The traditional K-12 accreditation process is facing mounting criticism for functioning as a significant barrier to education innovation, rather than a true measure of quality. Critics argue that the process risks protecting existing institutions and imposing mounds of red tape upon new schools. This critique is supported by history in higher education, where a 2022 report found that accreditors rarely discipline schools for poor student outcomes, such as low graduation rates or high loan default rates. process often seems better designed to protect the status of existing members than the interest of students, the report said. The proposed education savings account program in Texas holds a significant financial opportunity for families of students with disabilities, with potential annual funding reaching up to $30,000. This funding is designed to cover the high cost associated with specialized instruction, therapies, and private school tuition. However, a key mandate requires that any student with a disability must first obtain an initial evaluation from their local public school district to determine eligibility for higher ESA funds, regardless of whether the family intends to enroll there. Idaho's new $50 million refundable tax credit for private school tuition has been immediately met with a legal challenge from public education advocates, including the Idaho Education Association. The lawsuit asked the Idaho Supreme Court to block the tax credit, arguing that it violates a core mandate of the state constitution. The plaintiffs contend that the program breaches the state's requirement to establish a general, uniform, and thorough system of public free common schools, using the word uniform as their best legal challenge. In essence, by providing a refundable tax credit to families for private school tuition, the legislature is establishing a second school system that is not uniform with the public school system. School choice programs continue to face legal challenges nationwide, including in Missouri, where a new lawsuit awaits its day in court. At the end of June, the Missouri State Teachers Association sued to end the expanded Missouri Scholars Program, which is funded by tax credits. The teacher suit claims that the legislature's addition of $51 million in taxpayer dollars to the program this year is unconstitutional and calls for those funds to be eliminated. EdChoice legal advocates joined the state in defending the program, filing a motion to intervene as defendants in the lawsuit brought by the Missouri National Education Association. Public school enrollment in Brookline, Massachusetts has yet to fully recover from the substantial student losses that occurred during the COVID-19 pandemic. The school closures and shifts in learning during the pandemic fundamentally changed the educational calculus for many parents, prompting them to explore alternatives that they wouldn't have otherwise considered. For some families, this meant a permanent shift to private education, with some single mothers finding low-cost religious schools to be one of the only financially viable options compared to secular private schools with prices upwards of $40,000 per year. Today, that decline continues. School districts in the Fort Worth area of Texas are also reporting a noticeable and concerning trend of declining student enrollment in this fall semester, continuing a trend that is reshaping classrooms and budgets alike. This loss of students is attributed to a combination of factors, including falling birth rates, out-migration, and the aggressive expansion of public charter schools and microschools, which enrolled over 49,000 students in the 2024-25 school year alone there. Public school leaders in Texas are now expressing acute anxiety over the impending launch of the Texas ESA program next school year, anticipating a further acceleration of student flight. Since Texas funds schools based largely on daily attendance, fewer students translates directly into fewer dollars. And schools will have to prioritize what can they do to compete with these new institutions. Hawaii's public school system is also grappling with the student enrollment decline crisis, a trend consistent with the state's falling birth rates and patterns of migration. These losses have officially triggered administrative rules mandating that the Education Department begin a study on the potential for school consolidation. Although the study mandate is in effect, the Board of Education is considering adjusting the timeline after receiving feedback from school and district officials. These officials argued that while overall enrollment is down, some schools are approaching maximum capacity and may be better addressed through redistricting rather than an outright consolidation. Researchers from the RAND Corporation are encountering significant obstacles in their efforts to study the impact of attending a microschool on student outcomes. Jonathan Schwig, a RAND senior scientist, concluded that determining the impact is nearly impossible because of fundamental lack of useful assessment data. The data gap exists because many parents who choose microschools are actively fleeing the traditional system's perceived over-reliance upon standardized testing. To find a path forward, Mathematica is currently analyzing data from a small microschool study conducted with Rock by Rock, a project-based learning company. The assessment data was secured because participating microschools were incentivized to administer the iReady test 3 times a year to receive a discount on a subscription. Across the country, there is a clear shift in how schools are defining student success, moving toward valuing career readiness, civic knowledge, and financial literacy. The Department of Education called the America 250 Civics Education Coalition a landmark initiative dedicated to renewing patriotism and advancing a shared understanding of America's founding principles within schools. With oversights from Education Secretary Linda McMahon, the initiative aims to foster conversations about citizenship and America's values. McMahon emphasized that young Americans need to be equipped with an understanding of American history and values. Furthermore, 35 states now require students to take a personal finance course, indicating a widespread recognition that core academics must be addressed alongside essential workforce skills. This week, entrepreneurs and microschool leaders alike gathered for the Harvard Kennedy School's recent conference on emerging school models, providing a national stage for discussing the post-pandemic education landscape, confirming the rise of innovative alternatives. Key takeaways from the event, supported by insights from the Yass Prize, emphasized that labels do not define learning and highlighted the explosive growth of learner-centered models, particularly microschools. Experts at the conference suggested that the next wave of educational reform will be AI-driven, learning-centered ecosystems that fully embrace personalized, competency-based education. The event signaled mainstream recognition that the future of education lies in sustainable, adaptable, mission-driven environments that are designed to meet students where they are, rather than in centralized, one-size-fits-all systems. For this week's Microschool Showcase, we spotlight the Vela Education Fund, a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting everyday entrepreneurs who are creating alternative learning models across the nation. Vela provides critical grants and resources to founders, many of whom are teachers and principals themselves, who are launching microschools, homeschool co-ops, and other non-traditional environments. The Vela network is growing rapidly, now supporting over 4,200 such learning environments in all 50 states. Reaching over 5 million learners and families, these low-cost alternatives typically charge a median of $450 per month or about $4,500 annually, with the explicit goal of preparing students for a creative economy that demands high levels of self-reliance and independence. If you know of a microschool or organization that deserves a shout-out, drop a line and let us know. Thank you for tuning in to the Microschool Minute, your weekly review of microschooling news and events. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you'd like to support us, consider leaving a review. Until next week, happy microschooling.